Good evening. I'm humbled to be here, and I just wanted to first start off by saying thank you. Thank you for the invitation, but more importantly, thank you for understanding that we can never have an honest conversation if only a slither of the population is part of that conversation. Thank you for understanding that we can never have an honest conversation if only a slither of the population is even being thought about in those conversations. Thank you for knowing and realizing that each and every one of our kids need and deserve a champion, and we are never going to cherry pick our way to finding long-term solutions to the opportunities that we have in front of us. I wrote this story called The Other Wes Moore. And it was about my story and the story of another guy, thank you, and the story of another guy who also grew up in Baltimore and with similar life circumstances. And as I was literally the day after I just received a Rhodes Scholarship, the Baltimore Sun, which is my hometown paper, wrote this article about my life and my childhood and how I was a local kid who just got this award. And at the same time, they were writing about a botched armed robbery in my hometown of Baltimore, in which an off-duty police officer was shot and killed. And I later on found out that one of the people who was responsible during this crime was a young man who we were from the same neighborhood. We both grew up in single-parent households. We both had academic and disciplinary troubles. And also his name was Wes Moore. So at the same time, the Baltimore Sun was writing about this one Wes Moore was heading off to England on a scholarship. They were writing about this other Wes Moore from the same area who now just received a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. And I reached out to Wes, got to know him, and the story is really then about this evolution of these two kids as they're growing up in Baltimore. And I remember having a conversation with the publisher. This was probably about 6 months before the book was set to come out. And up until that point, the book was just called Untitled by Wes Moore, because we didn't have a title. And I thought, and I didn't realize the way the publishing industry works is that, everything on the inside of a book is what the author wants to share with the world. Everything on the outside of a book, the publisher holds on to those rights because that's their chance to market, right? So the cover, the title, the airbrushed author photos, the blurbs, all that kind of stuff, right? That's what the publisher holds on to because they know it's their only chance to market to a consumer. And I thought publishers actually cared about what authors thought. So I went into this meeting with them, the whole marketing team, like confident. And they're like, so Wes, what do you think the title of your book should be? And I'm like, you know what? I'm glad y'all asked me because there's like 6 titles that I really like. And I started rattling these titles off, and I look at them, and I said, so y'all can go ahead and choose between any of those 6 because I'm good with any of them. And they look at me and they say, that's very kind of you, but we think we have a better idea. And they said, what do you think about The Other Wes Moore? And I said, that might be the dumbest book title that I've ever heard in my life. True story. And they're like, what don't you like about it? I was like, there's a whole bunch of things I don't like about it. But I said, but let me start with 3, okay? The first thing, I said, I try to make it very clear that this story is not just about these 2 kids. It's not about one name. It's not about one socioeconomic group. It's not about one race. It's not about one street. It's not about one generation. It's about all of us. About the decisions that we make in our lives, but tantamount to that, the people who we have in our lives who are helping us to make those decisions. And so by putting the name inside of the title of the book, are you not completely negating that entire fact? That's one. Second thing I told them I like about it. What self-respected author do you know that puts their own name inside of a title of a book that they've written, right? And the third thing I told them I like about it is I was like, listen, no one knows who one Wes Moore is. So why does anybody care who the other Wes Moore is? So I said this to them, and they smiled, and they were like, those are actually all really good points. And they said, the problem, though, is that you're missing the point. Because you're absolutely right. It's not about you. And it's not about him. That the name is completely irrelevant. You can throw any name inside of that book title. It really does not matter. Because the truth is, there are Wes Moores that exist in every one of our schools, every one of our homes, every one of our communities. Kids who are literally one decision away from going in one direction or a completely different direction. Kids who are straddling this line of greatness And the problem is they don't even know it. The most important thing about the title is not the name. The most important thing about the title is the other. The fact is, our society is full of others. People who might not look like us, people who might not speak like us, people who might live in the other part of town than us. People who might not come from the same family lineage, people who every day feel like they're walking through our society going completely unnoticed. But people whose destiny matters as much to the long-term safety and security and greatness of our communities as ours does. The others. What you do every day is you make sure that the others are not othered. That the others know that their journey and their destiny is as important as anybody else. Because the truth is, we have many, many students who have really core and key advocates in their lives. And we have many students who do not. What we say about those kids says more about who we are than what we say about the ones who do have people and have those champions all throughout their lives. I know sometimes people say, so, for those who don't know, I had some issues when I was coming up. And when I was 13 years old, I had a mandatory, I got sent out of state for some things I got into. And so I had to go to this military school for a year, a mandatory year, right? And it was not by choice. I mean, I hated every minute of this place when I first showed up. And it's interesting because one thing that they stressed there, because people said, well, was the answer a military school? I said, absolutely not. I said, because, we're never going to come up with a solution by simply saying we're going to pick a kid up and put him somewhere, right? In my humble opinion, the best way you can help a child is by making sure that child comes up in a strong, supportive family. The best way you help that family is by making sure that family exists in a strong, supportive community. The best way you help that community is by making sure that community has an anchor educational institution in the community that serves the kids and the families. It's the most proven, effective, and cost-effective way of addressing this. So when I got sent away to this thing, one thing they did pretty early was they started introducing this idea of leadership into our lives. After breaking you down, they then try to build you up as a unit, right? But they do it very quickly by introducing leadership. And what they say is they're like, all right, they're going to put you in charge of something small. And they're like, all right, Moore, you're now in charge of this hallway. If the hallway's clean, we'll congratulate you. And if the hallway's dirty, then Lord help you, right? So I started taking that seriously. So now I'm like, all right, I'm in charge of this hallway, and I see Jones eating a bag of Doritos and throwing the Doritos out in the hallway. Well, I'm scooping Jones up because I'm not going to get in trouble because Jones can't find a trash can, right? And then they notice the hallway's clean. They're like, all right, Moore, it's looking pretty good. We're now going to make you a squad leader. You're now in charge of these 5 cadets under your command. And so I'm looking at this, and now I see Jones, and Jones shows up 5 minutes late for class. The teacher's not going to ask Jones, why are you late? The teacher's going to walk up to Jones and say, Jones, who's your squad leader? And they're going to come find me. And they're going to come up to me, and they're going to say, Jones was 5 minutes late for my class. Why? And I need to have an answer. But I guarantee you what, Jones tomorrow will be 5 minutes early for class. And then from there, you become a platoon sergeant or a first sergeant, but there's this graduated sense of responsibility. And again, I'm from the city of Baltimore, which I love with all my heart, but also I know we've been plastered on the news in a way that is not just heartbreaking, but it's heartbreaking because for everybody in Baltimore, we know that rage and that anger is real. We know that in many ways, Baltimore is kind of like a bed that isn't made, but what you do is you throw the comforter over it and straighten out the comforter and make it look like the bed is made. But when you pull the comforter off, all the sheets are all rustled and everything like that. Our comforter was lifted off. And so what happens is, when I'm talking to people and I hear people explaining how complicated the drug game and the gang culture and all this kind of stuff is, at first I used to agree just to kind of get along. But then I'm like, it's really not true. It's not that complicated at all. Because the only thing that they've done, they've taken the same structure of every Fortune 500 company and every military organization, and they made them their own. Because when they first started recruiting us at 8 years old and 9 years old, it wasn't to be kingpins, it was to be lookouts. And then from there you get promoted, and then you're a runner. And then from there you get promoted, and you're a cash kid, or you're muscle, or you're lieutenant, or whatever the case is. Being able to introduce a sense of belonging and leadership and comfort into a child matters. What happened to me wasn't the fact that I was picked up and moved. What happened to me wasn't the fact that I was physically transported. Me moving from Baltimore to the Bronx or military school, whatever, that didn't change my way of thinking. What changed was that I found myself surrounded by people. Starting with my mom and my grandparents, but eventually leading to this amazing string of role models and mentors and teachers and advisors who helped me to understand that the world is bigger than what's just directly in front of me. People who helped me to get that there was never going to be a single accident of birth, not being black, not being poor, not being from Baltimore, being from the Bronx, or being fatherless, that was ever going to define me or that was ever going to limit me. So I thank you today, not just for the profession that you chose, but for the freedom that you instill. That's why we're here. Thank you.